Hey, y'all. My name is Jay Westbrook. I'm an alcoholic and I'm old, so I use notes. And my notes say start with a joke. Um, what's the only thing an alcoholic does in moderation? The steps. Yay. So that's a good start. Tell them your name. My name is Jay Westbrook. I'm an alcoholic. Sober today by God's mercy in the practice of the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. Spent a lifetime in Los Angeles, and I'm now here in Tupelo, Mississippi for the last couple of years and absolutely loving it. And thank you so much, Kevin, for asking me to speak tonight. I'm surprising you. There are going to be a couple of us speaking. So I'm Jay, and then this is Nancy. So you're going to have Nancy here tonight as well. And my notes say, tell them about the book. So the book was written by Mario Puzo. Paramount Pictures bought it, I think, in 1968 or 69 and made the greatest gangster movie ever made. It was called The Godfather, and one of the greatest movies ever made. And in that movie, an attempt is made on Marlon Brando, the head gangster's life, and they wound but don't kill him. And his son, who was not going to go into the gangster business, decided to avenge his dad's death, and he killed the gangster who tried to kill his dad. He killed the crooked NYPD captain who was protecting that gangster, and he fled to Sicily. And in Sicily, he was out walking and he saw Apollonia. And it was thunderbolt love, amore prima vista, love at first sight. And they were inseparable from that first meeting right up until her death, which sadly was not that far down the road. And that is my story exactly, except for the gangster part and the Sicily part. But other than that, it's my story. And I said already that I'm old, so I'll tell you that it was Friday night, June 7th, 1968. And this is one of many stories I could tell you. I'm committed tonight to telling you a love story. And the story could be that I love my life, or I love my wife, or I love my God, or I love my program and the steps and the fellowship and the traditions and my career. There's so much that I love, and I had to choose which love story to tell you. And I'm telling you the Jancy, the Jay and Nancy love story. And like I said, Friday night, June 7th, 1968, party in Pacific Palisades, California that I didn't want to go to, but I knew there would be great outside issues at that party. And so I went, and there were. And about 1 a.m, my friend George came up to me with a little blonde named Nancy, introduced us, and I showed you before, this is Nancy, and he said she wants to walk on the beach. It's not safe at night, even in the Palisades. Go with her. And we took the footbridge over Pacific Coast Highway, and we came down on the beach in Pacific Palisades and walked and talked for the next 5 or 6 hours, maybe made out a little bit, but mainly walked and talked. And the sun came up, and it was amore prima noche, love at first night. And we were inseparable from that first morning on, just completely. It was a match made in heaven. We were both alcoholics. We were both drug addicts, and we did it till the wheels fell off. And mine fell off first, yay. And I got sober on December 2nd, 1988, still in that first sobriety. And Nancy had no interest in getting sober, but thank God she got lonely. And she started going to meetings for the entertainment value and the socialization, and she caught alcoholism through her ears. And on my 90th day, Nancy stood up and said, "My name is Nancy Morgan Westbrook. I'm a cocaine addict and an alcoholic," and stayed sober the rest of her life. And 11 weeks to the day after our 42nd wedding anniversary, Nancy died in my arms in our home on hospice with pancreatic cancer. And I will tell you that the ground went out from under me, absolutely went out from under me. And I didn't know if I could stay sober. But I've been well trained, and I understand that there's no situation so good that it can't be made worse by getting loaded. And there's no situation so bad that it can't be made worse by getting loaded. And I refused to disrespect the program that had given Jay so much, and that given Nancy so much, and that gave Jancy so much as a couple. And so I reframed my pain as small price to pay for a lifelong love affair, small price to pay. And I took my wedding ring off, took my ring and Nancy's, gave them to this guy, JR. He's a custom jeweler in Beverly Hills. And I said, make the rings, melt them together and make me a new one that's thicker and wider. And that's what I wear today. And so tonight, you kind of have Jancy speaking, two for the price of one. And we're so pleased to be here. And I will tell you that those feelings from that thunderbolt love, amore prima noce feelings, never abated, never dimmed, never lessened, right up until Nancy's terminal exhalation. The intense, loving passion was there. And I would like to tell you that those feelings were matched by behavior, but that would be a lie. That would be a lie, because we were alcoholics, and that meant that we were arrogant and grandiose and immature and dishonest and defensive and in denial and self-pitying and self-righteous, and thought we were self-supporting and manipulative and scorekeeping and disrespectful and liars and cheats and thieves and loners. And I want to tell you, when those are the qualities that you bring to the table of a marriage and a relationship, it's real hard to make it be a vulnerable, intimate, loving partnership. And we were totally baffled that we could love each other so deeply and yet not be able to match feelings with behavior. And I think at the end of this meeting, maybe not. No, you read Vision for You at the end. A lot of meetings, they read acceptance at page 449 in the third edition, 417 in the fourth edition, where Dr. Paul wrote. And Dr. Paul and his wife, Maxine, Max, he calls her, do a do-it-yourself couples communication workshop every year, and for couples who have at least one person in a 12-step program. And the first time we went, I had 6 months, Nancy had 3 months, and we repledged our love and decided we were going to try that. What's that thing called? Monogamy. We'd never tried that. Fidelity. And we rode down the hill from the UCLA Convention Center in Lake Arrowhead. And I said, I am going to find us some tools. And 2 days later, I discovered that the 12 traditions were the instruction manual for relationships, and that there's a tie between every step in the corresponding tradition. And we had no idea. And man, we got sponsors and we worked the steps, but we lived and loved those traditions, and they gave us the tools to transform deep loving feeling into consistent loving behavior. And I'm kind of talking about a marriage and a romantic relationship tonight, but these traditions work for all relationships, in the rooms, at work, in school, with your family of origin, on the freeway, with yourself, with God, and certainly in your romantic relationship. And we were liars, cheats, and thieves, and we were loners. Both of us were loners, and we were married. And when I say loner, what I mean is I lie to you, I lie to me, and I lie to God. And of those three, the most serious lie is the lie to myself, where I say I don't have a problem. And even if I did, I could handle it. I could stop if I wanted to. I just don't want to stop. God, I don't need you. I don't have a problem. And even if I did, I don't need your help. I got it. And that's a lie, and I tell that to myself, and it separates me and me from God and me from Nancy. And I can't get sober, I can't. We can. I get drunk. We stay sober. There was no we. Hopeless and scared and baffled and frustrated and hopeless and cornered and godless and desperate and smart, and can't figure out why it won't work. And then I find these traditions, and I step right into tradition one that says that our common welfare comes first. Our recovery depends upon our unity, and the recovery of our marriage depends upon Jay and Nancy's unity. And I looked a little different when I got sober. My stomach was flatter and smaller, and my hair was bigger. And and maybe I thought I could read minds because of my hair, and I knew, I didn't even think, I knew the IRS was after me, and they were going to seize my bank accounts. And okay, rigorous honesty, bank account, singular. It had $9,800 in it. It was early 89. And I rushed to the bank and I pulled all the money out and I put it in the back pocket, the hip National Bank, as we call that. And the next day I got on my little Honda Shadow motorcycle, 750 cc's, and you all know what happened, right? I have no idea how it happened, but I ended up in front of Glendale Harley Davidson, and in the window was a used red Softail with a price tag of $9,800. And I knew that the God in whom I didn't believe wanted me to have a Harley. But Jancy wanted a house, but Jay wanted a Harley, but Jancy wanted a house. And for the first time, I made a conscious decision to put the common welfare first. And I left the Harley in the window and the money in my pocket and got on my little Honda Shadow and putted home and put the money back in the bank. And we added to it over the next few years and then bought a house in Lake Balboa. And that's where we lived. It's where Nancy died. And it's where I continued to live until 2 years ago when I moved to Mississippi. And we created a workshop on these traditions, and there's a filter for each tradition. And that first tradition filter, if you don't hear anything else, or you want to jump off in a minute, just hear this filter and start using it. And I promise you, your life, your relationships will change starting tonight. There's no lag time with these traditions. And the filter is this: is what I'm about to say or what I'm about to do going to create greater separation or greater unity? And if it's greater separation, I don't say it and I don't do it. And if you don't hear a single other thing I say tonight, that tradition alone will make a huge difference in your relationship with God, with your romantic partner, on the freeway, in the rooms, at work, etc. And powerful stuff. And I don't know how y'all got here, but I got here absolutely insane, totally insane. And step two, came to believe a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, gave me some hope, but it didn't give me a single tool. Didn't tell me how I could get restored to sanity, didn't give me a tool. And I was insane. And, you know, a little of my background, mom went out the door when I was 5 months old, never came back. And dad remarried when I was 2. And when I was 3, stepmom and dad gave me away to a family that I hoped they thought was a good family so that they could focus on careers. And they weren't a good family. And I was 3 years old and terrified of the dark, and they locked me in a pitch black closet for 3 years. And I lived, ate, toileted, slept, existed, lived in that closet, being pulled out once a day to be washed, raped, and ritualistically tortured. And I lost everything. I lost my sanity, my safety, my security, my innocence, my trust. It wasn't safe. I was filled with hate and anger, and I couldn't turn it on adult perpetrators. So I learned how to turn it on me. And that's a behavior that lasted for decades, hurting myself with my wounds. And then at 6, I got pulled out of that situation and reunited with my parents and periodically re-victimized. And then we moved to California. And I think I was 15 or 16, and maybe a year later, I found alcohol and drugs, and they saved my life. They were not a problem. They were a solution. They let me stay on the planet. They kept me from suiciding, but made me really stupid. And that stupidity led to bad decision-making, and that decision-making put me in front of a power greater than myself, and that was Judge William Ritzie. And on my first ever encounter with the criminal justice system, he slammed that gavel down and sentenced me to double 5 to life in the penitentiary. And man, I did not want to go, because I had Nancy, and she's beautiful. And she was kinder than she was beautiful. I had no fear because it was my first encounter. I didn't even know there was a difference between jail and prison. And it took me about 5 hours to find out. I got to the penitentiary, and that first night coming up from chow hall, 5 guys grabbed me and beat me almost to death. and gang raped me. And that became who I was and what happened until I got out. That's how the penitentiary works. Once that happens, that's who you are. And it filled me with so much bitterness and blame and cowardice and irresponsibility and shame, massive shame and PTSD. And that PTSD where you look over your shoulder and you're just so jumpy and you have an exaggerated startle response and nightmares and flashbacks and there's a sense that I've got to control everything and everyone, and that's the only way I'll be safe. And if you would just do what I want you to do, I'd be okay, but you won't, and it makes me crazy. And that's the source of my insanity. And I'm out of my mind. Kind of like, y'all know who George Carlin is, the comedian? And he says, isn't it funny when I'm driving down the road, anybody's driving slower than me is a goddamn idiot, and anybody driving faster is an effing maniac. Like I'm the only person who knows the right speed to drive on any given road, on any given day, in any given situation, because I am the ultimate authority. And that's the problem. And that's my insanity. And I step into tradition too, and there's the solution. The short version says that there's one ultimate authority and it's not Jay. And the longer version says there's one ultimate authority, it's a loving God. And maybe if you made a little bit of room for that God could come in, and that God's not going to come in where you don't make room for him. God doesn't intrude. So make a little bit of room for God, and maybe with God will come a little bit of sanity. Holy crap, what an idea. And it's what I did. And it's what happened. And then it goes on to say in this tradition that there's but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. So we had to figure out, how do we do a group conscience with God? And we went back to having threesomes, but they were different than the old ones. Now it was Jay and Nancy and God. And here's what it looked like, based on the idea that you see what you look for. We see what we look for. And I would look for a loving God in Nancy. And when I looked for it, I saw it. And when I saw it, it changed how I spoke to her and how I spoke about her and how I engaged her. And now comes the hard part, because it's early sobriety and I hate me. But we see what we look for. And when I look for a loving God in me, I see it. And when I see it, it changes how I speak to myself and how I speak about myself. And most importantly, how I offer myself. And just from these first two traditions, that relationship changed 120 degrees behaviorally. And this stuff is so important, because if I'm saying, you piece of shit, you loser, you asshole, if that's how I'm speaking to myself and about myself, then what do I have to offer Nancy? And what do I have to offer God? And what am I saying about God's handiwork? Holy crap. It's just not how I want to be. And then I step into step 3. We make a decision in step 3 to turn our will and our life, our thinking and our behavior over to the care of God as we understood him. It's a lot of words. I keep it kind of simple, and I just say, I'm going to do God's work, not God's job. I'm going to do God's work, not God's job. And I'm a hospice nurse and a grief and loss counselor, hospice nurse for 33 years, grief and loss counselor for 31. And that feels like God's work. And then I step into the third tradition. I don't know if you all know the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, but in the beginning, everyone in AA was so worried that it might go away because of the kind of people coming through the doors, and they stopped them from coming through. And they said, we don't want queers or crackpots or fallen women, beggars, tramps, thieves, asylum inmates, or prisoners. The list is on page 140 in the 12 and 12. And they tried to keep these people out. They were so conditional about who could come in, only pure alcoholics. And thank God we got the traditions, which said, let's set aside our conditionality and let anybody in who has a desire to stop drinking, and then you see what's here today. We got queers, crackpots, fallen women. We got beggars, tramps, thieves. We've got prisoners, asylum inmates. Yay, I fit into a couple of those categories, and I'm sure most of you fit into at least one, if not more, and or have fit into it previously. And that's the kind of husband I want to be. One who's not conditional, who's unconditional. When Nancy wakes up, whether she's in a great mood or a bad mood, she comes home, she's had a good day or a hard day. I want to be that husband who's honoring and honorable, passionate and compassionate, consistent, courageous, curious, respectful, forgiving, playful, spontaneous, and a host of other qualities. Not like, okay, I'll be nice and kind and loving as long as you do what I want you to do when I want you to do it in the bedroom, as long as we see the movie I want to see, as long as we go to the restaurant I want to eat. No, my job is to be unconditional and consistent in my behavior. That means I also give up scorekeeping, remembering every good thing I ever did and every bad thing Nancy ever did, and being very willing to throw it in her face. Well, 7 years ago, you said, yeah, yeah. And I also need to allow what Nancy gives to be enough. And when I do that, it makes it safe for her to risk giving more, whether it's financially, sexually, emotionally, spiritually. When I allow what she gives to be enough, it makes it safe for her to risk giving more. What a gift, and then I step into that fourth step, and I don't know how you got here, but I got here, as a victim. And, if you'd had the childhood I had, then you'd drink too, and I'm different, and you don't understand. And I didn't do anything wrong. I'm the one who it was done to, and I really believed that shit. I'm not hurting anyone but me. And then I wrote a fourth step. I reached for the courage and the willingness to take a searching and fearless, a fact-finding and fact-facing, searching and fearless, fact-finding and fact-facing inventory of myself. And what happened was I learned, I became aware of, sensitized to, opened by the idea, able to see that my behavior affected other people. And when I learned that, then I could step into the fourth tradition, which says, the couple's version, that in a marriage or a partnership, each person should be autonomous, self-governing, except in matters affecting the other person or the couple as a whole. And so now that I see how my behavior from step 4 affects others, I can operate in tradition 4 because I can see how it affects others and whether or not this is something I need to sit and talk with you about or not. And a cute story about that is we lived right by Plummer Park in West Hollywood. We went to a Monday night meeting in Beverly Hills at La Cienega Park. We had a big, wide, white Chevy Blazer. And when I drove the right way, south on Martel and west on 6th. And Nancy, you'd go, oh my God, why are we going down these little side streets with this big, wide Blazer? We're going to get sideswiped. And when Nancy drove, she drove the wrong way. She went west on Santa Monica and south on La Cienega in all this traffic. And I would go, oh my God, why? And we'd get to the meeting and we were angry and uptight. But here's the deal, whether we went the right way, south and west, or the wrong way, west and south, we got to the meeting. And we decided, how about if driver decides and passenger doesn't counsel, advise, complain, pout, sulk, sigh, yell, or anything else? And we started getting to that meeting so happy and so joyous, and it was a great experience. And I don't know about you, but I thought that was a pretty cute story. I think most couples can probably relate to it. And arguing about which route to take. And here's a story about tradition 4 that's not so cute. So I always carry $1 million life insurance on myself and $500,000 on Nancy. And we must have crossed some little age threshold and that annual premium jumped. And I looked at it and I went, holy crap, I'm a cracker. And I looked at me and I was about 50 pounds heavier and pretty sedentary. And I looked at Nancy and she was slim and svelte and doing her martial arts, like in Kill Bill, the sword work and the nunchuck sticks. And And I said, I'm the one who's going to have the heart attack or stroke. And I just made a unilateral decision, never spoke to her, and didn't pay the premium on her policy. And 30 days later, they canceled that policy for non-payment. And 20 days later, Nancy was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer and given 4 months to live. And on that journey, she said to me, man, this is so hard. I mean, I know it's hard for you, sweetheart. You're losing me, but I'm losing you and everyone and everything I care about. But I got to tell you, at least I'm comforted knowing there's going to be that $500,000 cushion to carry you through retirement. And I couldn't lie to her. You know, she would have seen it in my face, and I just told her, and she got so pissed. And she said, you've got a fourth tradition. Why would you do that on your own unilaterally? Because now you've added, like, my burden isn't heavy enough. You've added to my burden. Now, from today until the day I die, I'm going to be worried in part about your financial future and how you're going to get through retirement. And I said I was sorry. And she forgave me, and we cried in each other's arms. But here's the deal. If I take a really nice ceramic dinner plate and I throw it on the ground and it breaks, and I go, oh my God, I am so sorry, plate. The plate's still broken, you know, and I'm sorry doesn't go very far. And the truth is, Nancy did carry that burden right up until the day she died. And I get to live today with the burden of knowing that I added to Nancy's burden. Here's the hospice nurse who knows all about hospice and palliative care and grief and loss, and I'm adding to my wife's burden instead of reducing it. And it would be really nice to have a $500,000 cushion right about now in my life, and I don't. Oh well. And in the fifth tradition, you know, we read our inventory, and the principle for the sponsee is trust and integrity. You want them to be honest. And for the sponsor, it's confidentiality and unconditional love. We continue to love our sponsees no matter what they reveal to us as they read that fifth step to us. And so now I step into the fifth tradition with that understanding of unconditional love. And the fifth tradition says that we have a primary purpose, and it's to carry the message. Well, what's the message? It's love and tolerance. And we carry it, it says, to the alcoholic who suffers. So it doesn't say anything about the drunk, homeless alcoholic. It just says the alcoholic who suffers. So Nancy comes home at the end of the day. She's an interior plantscaper. She's been fighting traffic, dealing with the public. It's wonderful work with plants, but her back is sore and her arms are full and she can't close the door. And so she kicks it shut and it slams. And I'm like, hey, what are you bringing that anger into my house for? But it's not mine. It's ours. And it's not a house. It's a home. And what if it's not anger? What if I can reframe her behavior as a manifestation of her suffering rather than seeing it as anger? If I can see it as a manifestation of her suffering, then this tradition tells me I need to bring love and tolerance. I need to replace my judgment and criticism with mercy. And now comes the hard part, because I got to do the same with me. And here's the deal: without excusing myself from accountability or responsibility, I have to accept that when my PTSD gets triggered, it can come out in some wonky behavior. And when it does, instead of saying, you got you at, I need to bring the same love and tolerance to Jay and replace that judgment with mercy, because judgment comes from the head and mercy comes from the heart, and judgment wounds and mercy heals, and judgment separates and mercy unites. Judgment is touching pain with fear, and mercy is touching that same pain with love. And then I step into tradition 6, one about money, property, and prestige, not letting those become paramount in our relationship or in my recovery. And I'm a hospice nurse and grief counselor. I'm not about money. I'm not about property, but I got to watch out for the prestige part. You know, the prestige of being the one in the know when I gossip. Oh my God, did you hear Bill and Sally broke up? See how important I am? I have that information and you don't. or the prestige of being the martyr when I work harder on a sponsee's recovery than they do, which I should never be doing. You never work harder on a sponsee's recovery than I do on my own, or that they do on their own. Or the prestige of having the worst childhood. I didn't. I had a horrendous childhood, and so did lots of other people in the rooms and out of the rooms. And I balanced that memory of those horrible things with a realization that I suffered exquisitely. I suffered profoundly. And that suffering became my vehicle for awakening compassion in me and for others. It's what allowed me to forge a relationship with suffering. And now as a hospice nurse and grief counselor, I can be with suffering. I can bear witness with a compassionate presence without imposing my tools, bringing the restraint and the humility and the courage and the compassion to simply sit and bear witness to another's suffering and not impose my tools unless and until they're asked for. And then there's a seventh tradition that saved my life. And I know we all think seventh tradition, that's the money. We're self-supporting, and it is about the money, but that's not all it is. And again, I don't know how you all got here, but I got here with a pistol in my hand and I aimed it at my foot, and I'm a good shot. And I shot myself in the foot again and again and again. In other words, I was self-sabotaging. And so the filter we created for that seventh tradition is so simple: is what I'm about to do, or what I'm about to say, or what I'm about to do, self-sabotaging or self-supporting? Wow. And if I can pause for a heartbeat, just for a heartbeat, and ask that question, is what I'm about to say or what I'm about to do self-sabotaging or self-supporting, I can keep from stepping in it, and just screwing up one thing after another, whether it's my health, my money, my marriage, my career, my whatever it is. I found lots of ways to sabotage my life and my happiness. And I had an old timer say to me when I got here, I looked around and I thought, everybody, you know how the alcoholic newcomer thinks in black and white? Always, never, everyone, nobody, black, white, good, bad. And I looked around and I thought, everybody's happy except me. And I was asking everybody, what do I need to do to be happy? What do I need to do to be happy? And this old timer, it was a long time ago, he said to me, kid, kid, he said, kid, stop worrying about what you should do to be happy and just stop doing the things that are making you unhappy. Holy crap, I just about fell over. It was some of the greatest advice I've ever been given. And it was just tossed out like a throwaway. And it dovetails perfectly with this filter. Is what I'm about to do self-sabotaging or self-supporting? And if it's not self-supporting, I don't do it. And I step into step 8 and I do that little 3-column inventory. Who did I harm? How did I harm them? And what were the character defects at play? And I get sensitized again to the fact that I harm others. And now I can step into tradition 8, one of my favorites for my marriage. And you're going, wait a minute, Jay, that tradition 8, that says Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional. What does that have to do with a marriage? And the answer is everything. Everything. And here's why. So we're at that Monday night La Cienega Park meeting in Beverly Hills, and the meeting ends. And Nancy's there chatting with this really nice couple. She's just chatting with them. We're not going out to eat with them or anything, at least not that night. And I'm not part of the conversation. And I hear Nancy say, oh my God, our favorite Italian restaurant's Benvenuto's at La Cienega in Santa Monica. And I go, no, it isn't. It's on the south side of Santa Monica, just west of La Cienega. And I saw the hurt in Nancy's eyes, that I would speak to her so harshly and do it in front of other people and be so desperate and so needy to be right that I needed to make her wrong. And what was going on was I was acting like a professional. because that's what a professional is, a know-it-all, an expert who's focused on the win, who's competitive and rigid and intolerant and impatient. That's not who I want to be as a husband. I want to be the amateur who does this for fun and for free, who's cooperative, not competitive, who's flexible, not rigid, who's patient and tolerant, not impatient and intolerant, who's focused on the journey, not on the win, not on the goal, that Nancy can fall down or I can fall down and we can just stop and say, it's okay, and help each other up and walk side by side. That side by side deal is so important. My very favorite picture of us is one where we're walking through the forest together from behind. I love that picture. And that's how I want to work with her.
Put it back up her. Put it back up her.
Yeah. So that's my favorite picture of us, and it captures so much. And and then in tradition 9, which is kind of similar to 8, but it says Alcoholics Anonymous has no, alcohol AA as such ought never be organized. And I don't know what you think when you hear the word organized, but what I think is manipulate, because that's what manipulation is. I'm trying to organize your thoughts, your words, your behavior to further my agenda or endorse my position. I'm trying to organize your thoughts, your words, your behavior to further my agenda or endorse my position. And there's a problem with that. Number one, anything I get, whether it's in the bedroom or the boardroom, anything I get through manipulation is going to be less satisfying than if I had earned it or it had been gifted to me. It's just the way it works. It's not as satisfying when it's gotten through manipulation. And when I'm being manipulative, there's no room for humility or curiosity or faith or God. I'm not trusting. What if God has something better for me in terms of a career? What if Nancy had something better in mind in the bedroom and I'm trying to get her to do this and she, it's just like no faith, no God, no humility, no curiosity, and reduced satisfaction. So it's a good idea to learn to give to give up manipulation. And then there's step 10, I write daily inventory. And you all know the drill. I either write inventory or I create it. I'm either going to take my inventory or I'm going to take yours. And when I do that and I really learn how to live with daily inventory written and read to a sponsor, then I can step over into tradition 10, which is so powerful. And it's the one that asks me to learn how to disagree without being disagreeable. It talks about having no opinion on outside issues. And it's not easy to define what is an outside issue, but I think I do it sort of ass backwards. I define what my inside issues are. I've only got 3: my relationship with God, my relationship with recovery, my relationship with Nancy. Everything else is an outside issue. Those are my 3 inside issues. Those are the hills I'm going to die on. I may have opinions on other stuff. Those are not things that's not a hill I'm going to die on. And so when it has a reduced importance, then it can't move me into impulsive reactive behavior. And what I want to do is disagree without being disagreeable. And I always think of Mary Matlin and James Carville. They are a married couple who are both political commentators. One is a staunch liberal, one is a staunch conservative. They usually appear together on TV. They disagree on every political and most social issues, and never once have I seen them be disagreeable with or disrespectful to one another. And that's what I aspire to, by understanding what my really inside issues are, and then I step over into step 11 and I do prayer and meditation. Yay. And it better fits me to connect to a loving God. And then we get to my favorite tradition. Once I've done that prayer and meditation and I feel closer to God, and the 11th tradition is the one that says our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. What does that have to do with a marriage? Oh my God, so much. So here's the deal. I was not only raised atheist, drilled into my head, there is no God, there is no God. Don't ever believe in God. It's the opiate of the masses. It's used to control people. Don't believe in God. And then I had the incest, the rapes, and the ritualistic torture, and then the gang rapes in the penitentiary to prove there was no God. But I blamed the God I did not believe in for every bad thing that ever happened to me, and credited that God that I didn't believe in with none of the good stuff. In other words, I was a hypocrite. I was intellectually lazy. I was trying to have my cake and eat it too. You can't have it both ways. There is, or God is everything, or God is nothing, and I was trying to walk a line where there was no God, but it was God's fault that all these bad things happened to me. And I prayed to that God. And here was what my prayer sounded like, with punctuation. Please, comma, God, comma, don't let that liquor store close before I get there. Please, comma, God, comma, let the dope man be there and the dope be good. Please, comma, God, comma, don't let those police be pulling me over. So I prayed all the time and told her I didn't believe in God. And I told her the reason I didn't believe in God was I was a scientist. And I wanted to be a veterinarian. I didn't get into vet school, but I had, anatomy and physiology and immunology and embryology and histology and a whole lot of other ologies. And I took a lot of science classes. I had a minor in biochemistry, and I'm really scientifically educated, but I am not a scientist, because a scientist is curious and open-minded and investigative and evaluative. And I was none of those things. I was just parroting my parents, and here's what happened, on the day of a very well-planned suicide, I ended up in the rooms, and thank God it was Cocaine Anonymous. And at the end of that meeting, they said, honey, you are really sick. And I went, oh my God, thank you. They said it wasn't a compliment. It was an observation. You're really sick. You'd probably benefit from morning meetings. We're cocaine addicts. We don't do anything in the morning. Go to Log Cabin. It's an AA meeting in West Hollywood on Melrose and Robertson, and you can talk about drugs. And on my third day sober, I went to Log Cabin for the first time, and I've never left. It's still my Zoom home group. And Nancy and I never had children. We didn't like children, and we didn't have them. Thank God. There are people who don't like them and they go ahead and have them. Why would they do that? Baffles me. So here's alcoholism. I don't like children. And when I got sober, I was associate director of medical research at a children's hospital in Los Angeles. Why would you be working with a population and a job you hate with a population you dislike? Because that card that I could hold up and give to you, my business card, had that impressive title. So I get to Log Cabin. It's on my third day sober, December 5th, 1988. And you know how we can spot the newcomer? Well, there's a gay boy in a pink shirt, just like this, standing at the top of the steps. And he took one look at me and he knew I was new. And he said, hi, honey. Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. If you leave your fantasies at the door, all of your dreams can come true in AA if you're willing to work for them. And I about fell over, because I was living a fantasy. And the fantasy was, if I hand you this business card, you'll be impressed. You weren't. And my dream was to work with the dying, and I was ignoring it. And they say, don't make any big, whoever they are, don't make any big changes in your first year. Make a decision to turn your will and your life. That's a pretty big. They say, don't make any big decisions. So that meeting ended, and with 3 days sober, I drove into the hospital and quit my job. and went down to LA County USC Medical Center County Hospital and got a job as a cancer nurse for a year, and then a pain management nurse for a year. And then I made the leap to hospice. And here's what happened. Here's what happened. The place where life and death meet is filled with God. Period. That's not a thought, a question, a hypothesis, a theory, an idea. For me, it was an experiential certainty. There was God in death call after death call after death call. I couldn't deny it. And I just had to figure out, how could this God that I never believed in, but is obviously here, how can I make that work with my story? And lots of iterations, but where I got to was, there is a loving God that designed it, created it, put it in motion, and gave us free will. And my God never leaves my side, ever, co-journeys with me always, and co-suffers with me, but does not intervene. So he watched me being raped at 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and wept at my suffering, and looked at my rapists and wept at their suffering, that they had moved so far from his grace, but didn't intervene, because he made them with everything they needed for redemption, and made me with everything I needed for resilience. And I don't know if they reached for it, but I know that I did. First through drugs and alcohol, and when that didn't work, then through the powerful fellowship and the transformative steps and traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. And this AA repair shop put me back together. Came in here Humpty Dumpty broken. All the king's horses, all the king's men could never put Jay back together again, and y'all did. And I am whole, WHOLE, nothing missing, nothing broken. I'm whole, emotionally, sexually, spiritually, physically. I am a whole man. And it's because of this AA repair shop. And so this 11th tradition gives me a filter by which I again put my words and my behavior through. And what's so interesting is that my prayer has not changed, except with punctuation, where it used to be, please, comma, God, comma, don't let that liquor store close till I get there. Today, my prayer is, please, God, behave in a way that I believe would please a loving God. And so the filter says, as my loving God stands at my side, would that God find what I'm about to say or what I'm about to do to be attractive? And if I don't believe that my words and my actions would be attractive to a loving God, then I don't say them and I don't do them. And holy crap, I'm just about out of time. And I will tell you, these 11 traditions are amazing. They changed my life and our marriage, and I am really good at them. Then there's that 12th tradition, and I really suck at it, but I'm only 35 years sober. I'm hoping by the time I hit 40 years sober, I will have mastered that 12th tradition, which says, it calls me to give up my desperate, the wording is actually, anonymity is a spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. What it calls me to do is to be anonymous, to give up my desperate need for recognition, attaboys, good job, Jay, for confetti and bands and celebrations and parades. And look, Nancy, look, I vacuumed. I see you did, honey. I also see the spots you missed. And Nancy's vacuumed the last 6 times, and I suddenly think I need a celebration because I vacuumed, or I'm cleaning up the dog poop, which same thing I would do if I lived alone, or take the garbage out. It's like, and then I was running around the country being keynote speaker at all of these annual hospice conventions, meetings, their annual meeting, and they were paying me nice checks, and I very quietly used them to pay down the mortgage. And I wrote that final check, and Nancy was on her home computer, and I walked into her office and I said, Nancy, The house is ours. I just wrote the last check. We paid off the mortgage. And she stopped and she looked up at me with that $1 million smile and said, "Oh my God, honey, that's amazing. I love you." And went back to work. And I'm like, wait a minute. Where's the parade, the confetti, the band, the sex, the presents, and I forgot she is from Wichita, Kansas. And she stopped and she looked at me and she said, "Sweetheart, they lent us the money and we paid it back. That's what we're supposed to do." And went right back to work. And I'm like, no, I'll just live with the first 11 traditions. This 12th one sucks. I need the attaboys. So that's my story, y'all. I'm hoping by the time I get to 40, I will have mastered that 12th tradition. But for now, it's the AA repair shop, as I call it. AA is Alcoholics Anonymous. Repair, means again, pair means to bond or connect. And this AA repair shop has reconnected me, rebonded me to a loving God, to myself, to Nancy, to a purpose for living, to live fully, love deeply, serve others, and with a set of principles and tools by which I can live that purpose. I am a very grateful alcoholic. My name is Jay Westbrook. Thank you so much for having me, y'all.